Hi, I'm James from Borussia Dortmund English, and this is the Echte Liebe podcast. After the unconvincing win against Freiburg, we knew that we'd have our work cut out over the next 3 games. So far we'd stuttered, not really got going, and found ourselves in a similar position to the start of last season, where we just couldn't find our form. With Wolfsburg at the Westfalenstadion up next, we had an opportunity to put the drop points against Hoffenheim behind us, whilst at the same time laying down a solid foundation for a run of games that quite simply looks daunting for any BVB fan right now. Wolfsburg had won 3 of their opening 4 games, whereas we were coming off a loss in our opening Champions League game at PSG. Edin had switched not only the personnel in that game, but also our formation. It hadn't worked. Yet, we were left unsure as to what his next move would be after facing heavy criticism in midweek. Right now, he's stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to any decision that he makes, and I wouldn't have blamed him if he'd shied away and started to doubt himself, but luckily for us he didn't. In fact, he decided he was going to make a statement with his team selection and ultimately send a message to those that he feels are underperforming. What he did do, however, was revert back to our usual formation with 4 in defence. Schlotterbeck partnered Hummels in the middle, with Riasson and Bensebaini either side. Nothing groundbreaking there, I think you'd agree. But then came what was the biggest surprise to me at least, as Özcan was preferred ahead of club captain Emre Can in the holding role. I've made no secret that I'm a big fan of Salih Özcan. He's seemingly become the scapegoat though whenever he's played and the result hasn't gone our way. But so has the man he came in to replace. The other impact of this change was that the captain's armband was passed to vice-captain Gregor Kobel, many of whom think should have been first choice for the role over Emre Can. These weren't the only moves Edin made, as Jamie Bino Gittens and Niklas Füllkrug came in to start their first games of the season, and they were joined by Marco Reus, who was in the starting lineup for the first time since the opening day. It was clear that the team needed a spark, and Edin was brave enough to try and force it. The midfield did seem more stable and it was able to keep control of the game, something that we struggled to do in previous weeks, whereas Bino Gittens repeatedly ran at the Wolfsburg defenders and wreaked havoc time and time again. With that being said, the first half passed without too much in terms of chances, although what was evident was the ease at which Wolfsburg were able to break when we lost possession, for example just before half time. Nico Schlotterbeck dived in on the halfway line only to miss the ball, leaving a 3-on-2. When the shot came in, it was easily dealt with by Kobel, but the warning signs were there. The opening goal was going to be crucial in a game with so few clear-cut chances. So in the second half, we needed to find a way to make sure it was ourselves that scored it. After the break, we settled quicker and started to impose ourselves even more on the game. We'd limited Wolfsburg to no clear-cut chances and only 1 shot on target. So it came as no surprise in the 68th minute when we opened the scoring, and along with it came a huge sigh of relief. Julian Brandt was again the man to unlock the opposition defence down the left-hand side. His ball into the box was low and straight onto the foot of Marco Reus. His finish was perfectly timed and placed across the keeper as substitute Daniel Malen also came rushing in. Advantage Dortmund, and for once this season we actually looked good value for it. Unlike 2 weeks before in the Hoffenheim game, we held firm and managed the last 20 minutes of the game extremely well. The introduction of both Haller and Emre Can was a nice touch by Edin before securing our second home win of the season. 5 games played, 3 wins and 2 draws. But more importantly, a better team performance and at last a well-deserved win, albeit a narrow one. Next up was the game at Hoffenheim, and one that in the build-up felt similar to the Freiburg game just 2 weeks before. Both teams had made a fast start to their Bundesliga campaigns and both games were away from home. The issue that Edin faced here surrounded the team selection, as I'm sure it always is the case to some extent. But on this occasion he had a headache with regards to who stays in from a team that took all 3 points just 1 week before. There's an old saying in football, and that is that you don't change a winning team. But when that winning team didn't include your club captain or top scorer, the next move you make could be crucial. When the team was announced, the general mood was a positive one. I posted a possible lineup a few hours before kickoff and managed to get 10 out of the 11 players that were eventually selected. The only absence was that of Emre Can, as Felix Nemecha and Salih Özcan kept their places at the base of the midfield. This must be a very difficult time for Emre, as it was the second straight game that he'd been overlooked and that his captaincy had been passed to Gregor Kobel. It's just another example of Edin not being afraid to make the tough decisions for the better of the team and ultimately the club. I'm still certain that Emre Can will be back and to his best very soon. I'm sure he has the full backing of the team and the backroom staff, even if he doesn't from all sections of our supporters. Salih Özcan, on the other hand, has taken his chance and gripped it with both hands. He seems reluctant to let it go. In any top team, there's competition, and this is what will drive each of them to get better, something that can only be beneficial in the long term. From the results, we can only hope that it continues, and for once, I'm sure that it's the type of headache that Edin isn't so keen to relieve himself of. The game itself was a comedy of errors with a piece of brilliance added into the mix. Our first goal was a defensive one, but it was a nice break to have been given all the same. Julian Brandt was alive as Brooks miscontrolled a simple throw-in from Bebu. It looked as though he wanted to take it into his stride, but inadvertently pushed it into the path of Niklas Füllkrug. Niklas opened up his body as he applied the perfect finish into the bottom corner. His first BVB goal and yet another assist from Julian Brandt. The next error to occur was the decision to award Hoffenheim a penalty. Mats Hummels will be the first to put his hands up and accept responsibility for his mistake, but that still doesn't mean that we should be punished by yet again poor officiating. They could argue that it wasn't a clear and obvious error, but when the result is the difference between a free kick or a penalty, surely it then becomes clear and obvious. Unfortunately, there was nothing we could do other than watch Kramaric level for Hoffenheim. For the remainder of the half, we appeared to lose a lot of the control that we'd enjoyed before the hosts had drawn level. We needed someone to take the game by the scruff of the neck and make something happen. That player, like on so many occasions over the last 12 months, was Daniel Malen. Although he'd enjoyed lots of success down the left earlier in the half, he'd then been moved to his more familiar right-hand side. On the stroke of half-time, he drove at Anton Stack before using his strength to just leave him on the floor. He drilled a ball across that Oliver Baumann, who is usually so reliable, only managed to get a hand to and flick up into the path of Marco Reus. Reus still had so much to do as the ball sat at an awkward height. Yet again, he showed how valuable he is as he smashed in our second goal. A sucker punch just before the break for Hoffenheim, but we'd take it, as we knew we'd be in for a very long and very hard second half. Those fears were confirmed in the 48th minute, as Hoffenheim's early pressure resulted in a point-blank save from Gregor Kobel from just 6 yards out. There was the warning sign, as if we needed any more, but the worst was yet to come. Now this is a player that I've stuck up for and fought his corner so many times recently. Yes, I'm talking about Rami Bensebaini. I won't get into the specifics, but it's clear we aren't seeing the same player that Mönchengladbach had. We can forgive him for that. We know his quality at both ends of the field, and I have no doubt that he'll continue to get better the more he settles in. But this was Rami at his worst. After getting booked in the 67th minute, he decided to kick the ball away as a Hoffenheim player attempted to take a quick throw-in. Just 4 minutes after his first, he received a second yellow card for what he'll admit was purely a moment of madness. He left us with 10 men away from home, narrowly holding on to a 2-1 lead and with over 20 minutes left. Not his proudest moment, but it paved the way for the moment of brilliance I mentioned earlier. As Marius Wolf came on in the aftermath of the sending off, we saw Julian Ryerson move to the left-hand side as we have countless times before. He seems comfortable there. I personally prefer him on the right, but after what we all came to witness in the 95th minute, I think I'm going to have to start keeping my opinions on players and their positions to myself from now on. From deep inside his own half, as we were being pinned back by the home side, he picked up the ball and ran. He ran, and ran some more, first past Bebu, then cutting inside Grilic, before driving at Baumann. He had both Haller and Adeyemi to his right, but after what he'd just done, I think he deserved to finish it. And that's exactly what he did. Like a seasoned striker, he placed the ball past Baumann before somehow having the energy to continue running as he celebrated. What had we just witnessed? If that was Lionel Messi, we'd still be seeing highlights of it 50 years from now. It was unbelievable, and even more so was that we'd navigated yet again another really difficult game with 10 men and taken all 3 points. Freiburg, Wolfsburg and now Hoffenheim. Who would have thought that before those games we'd have taken maximum points with 2 of the 3 being away from home? This is what we were doing in the second half of last season, but this season we are already finding a way to win. There's tougher tests ahead, but that's why these games are so important. Getting the points on the board now will mean less pressure when we play the likes of Bayern, Leverkusen and Leipzig. Right now it feels good to be a BVB fan again, and with AC Milan up next in the Champions League, let's hope we can have it continue in more than just the Bundesliga. If you have managed to get this far in the show, then I'd like to say a huge thank you. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button, and if you want to support the show, you can become a Borussia Dortmund English member via the Patreon page. And this really does make a huge difference, so again, thank you. I'll put all of the links below, but for now, I will see you all on the pages over the coming week. Take care everyone, and thank you for tuning in to the Echte Liebe podcast.